Hello, my name is Monica Williams, and this video series is about practicing strategies for a chromatic scale. And in particular today we're going to be talking about a B-flat chromatic scale because many of the students have auditions coming up with a B-flat chromatic scale. So I'm going to tell you some ways that I practice this. The instructions for this are to play it as fast and accurately as possible. And I'm going to throw in beautifully, as fast, accurately, and beautifully as possible, as if it was in a piece of music and you're going to really own it, as if it was a musical work, even though it's just a 12-note scale. So first of all, if you don't know what the B-flat the B-flat chromatic scale is, I think it's in your band book. However, I would recommend memorizing it. Chromatic scale is every white note and black note in order, right? It's a little easier on piano because literally you can go up the keyboard, white note, black note, white note, black note, white note, white note. You can go all the way up. You don't have to know anything about music to be able to do that. On flute, we don't see that quite as much because our fingers are here and they're not relating to where they are in the keyboard. So memorize that if you can. I think it does help with the fingering. You don't get kind of twisted in the moment when you're doing your auditions. I think it's just a better way to kind of go about things. Okay, how to practice a B-flat chromatic scale. There's different approaches to this. One is you can put a metronome on and do eighth notes or quarter notes, make sure it's really even. If you haven't watched my video about how to hold the flute, make sure you do that. It's really super important. I can't tell you how many technical problems, how fast your fingers move, are fixed by just how you're holding the flute. So I did a whole video segment on that, but the crash course is make sure it's balanced, make sure this finger is curved and holding the flute, make sure this thumb is underneath here, holding the flute here, and then you're balancing with your chin. There's a lot more in the other video. Okay, so B-flat chromatic scale, I talked about in the other video with the B-flat major scale how you could use your B-flat thumb key. In this one you want to use the B-flat first finger key that you were taught with because it's easier to go from a B-flat to a B natural with one motion rather than a sliding thumb motion. It's just not the best motion in the world. There's also a lever key, but let's just talk about that for a second, the B-flat first finger key. So this would be kind of a nice even pace, and again, a metronome is going to be your friend. Download a free app. Here's a nice even pace for a B-flat chromatic scale. And those are eighth notes. That might be a little too fast for you, and that's okay. Know your own limits. Maybe do quarter notes. If your fingers are uneven or you're skipping notes or your fingers are jumbling up, start with a slower tempo. Easier to do that tongued too, so if you're doing a slower tempo. Okay, here's another way of practicing it is chunking or making it little bits rather than a whole bigger amount so that your fingers can really own this pattern. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to think in terms of 6 notes at a time. So the chromatic scale has 12 notes in it, right? My first 6 would be, I'm going to stop on my E natural, and then I'm going to start in the E natural again, then down, rest. Okay, so doing it that way, I'm going to be able to really learn those patterns. I can take it down one step even further and just do maybe 3 notes at a time. Now I'm like thinking in smaller departments. I can make sure my fingers are even. This is what you're looking out for. You don't want flyaway fingers that are uneven. You want them to be nice and even. So going back to my 6. That's a nice even tempo. I can do that slower even yet, but still in 6s. Rest. All right. If you got this, next year we're going to talk about how to make it super beautiful, super flowing. Let's think about where we want to put our breath. Know where your limits are in this breath. There's kind of two options that I work with students, and that is to do it a breath at the top, or breathe, be able to do the entire scale in one breath. I'll do both ways. Or one breath. If you got that, see if you can play that 10 times and be as accurate every single time. Or at least 9 out of 10 times. I mean, we're human, right? You're never going to be perfect all the way through. If you would say that you're getting that B flat chromatic scale only right maybe 5 out of 10 times, that would be an indication that you need to work on it more. And let's say that your audition was, or your chair placement audition was the next day, I would do a slower tempo because you want to be as accurate as possible, right? But I do think that this is a wonderful way to challenge ourselves and see if we can get faster and better fingers. So always kind of push yourself to be better, but know your limits so that you can perform your very best. And before you play this chromatic scale, think about what your tempo is before you do this, because so often we don't think about what tempo we want to do, and we get in that moment and our fingers just run away with us. That's where you're going to really own it. Here's another way to challenge yourself. If you can play this B flat, if you're one of those people that can play the B flat chromatic scale, you know it. See how many times you can play it in one breath. It's a challenge, but it's another way to kind of trick your brain, because you want to make your practicing intentional and kind of exciting, and always have a goal to strive for. Another way that you can practice this, and again, you don't have to perform it this way, but if you really know your B flat chromatic scale and you know it one octave, why not learn the second octave, right? It's harder, and you might have to go slower. Hopefully you'll go slower to begin this. But the same methods apply. You can work on your top notes. Make sure you know the fingerings, the correct fingering. So look at a fingering chart. Right? All the way up and down. You can even do 2-note chunks. All the way up and down until you really, really know it. Because eventually, all those high notes are going to be part of your repertoire that you're going to have to be called upon to play. And so if you practice them a little bit in your daily practice, then you're going to know them when they actually come up in your music. So hopefully you found this helpful about just different ways to kind of practice. To reiterate, slow is better than fast if you can't play it accurately. Play it many times so you know that your own limits to your tempo, know how fast you can play it, so you're challenging yourself but you're still within control. And then have fun with your practicing. All right. If you have any questions or want to reach out to me about anything, you can reach me on my contact information, which is bayareaflutist.com. Thank you.